What if I told you the biggest, meanest pike on this lake isn't sulking on the bottom? What if I told you he's actively hunting just a few feet, maybe even a few inches, right under your boots? For years we've been taught to go deep. Find the deepest hole and drop your bait. But that single piece of advice might be the biggest mistake you're making in your ice fishing. Today we're talking about tip-up depth and why you are probably setting them way, way too deep. Stick around because I'm going to show you a simple change in thinking that could completely transform your season and put a monster northern on the ice for you. And I have a question for you to chew on while you watch. How deep do you typically set your tip-ups for pike? Drop a comment below. I want to see what the standard is for you guys. Let's be honest, we've all been there. You get to the lake, drill a dozen holes, and the first thing you do is drop a sounding weight to the bottom. The thinking is simple and has been passed down for generations. It's cold, fish get lethargic, so they retreat to the deepest, most stable water to conserve energy. It makes a certain kind of sense, right? It's the gospel of ice fishing preached by grandfathers and old-timers. We follow this rule without question because occasionally it works. You might snag a decent fish down there. But what if that occasional success is blinding you to a much more consistent, much more explosive pattern happening right under the surface? We're so focused on the bottom of the lake that we've completely ignored the ceiling. Picture this. It's early morning, the sun is just starting to hit the ice. You set your first tip-up, letting the line spool out, 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet, until it thumps the bottom. Then you reel it up a foot or two. That's the ritual. It feels right. It feels professional. You're covering the strike zone. But the entire time, the real action, the real feeding frenzy could be happening in that massive column of water you just ignored. That huge, aggressive pike you're after isn't waiting for a meal to be delivered to his doorstep on the bottom. He's a hunter, and in winter, his prime hunting ground is often closer to the sky than it is to the mud. This single habit of going deep by default is the first thing we need to unlearn. So where did this deep and slow myth come from? It's rooted in a partial truth about fish metabolism. Yes, as water gets colder, a fish's metabolism slows down. They don't need to eat as often, but slow doesn't mean stationary. And it certainly doesn't mean they all gather in the deepest hole for a winter-long meeting. A pike is an opportunistic apex predator. It will position itself in the location that gives it the highest chance of getting a meal with the least amount of effort. If the food is shallow, the pike will be shallow. We've taken the slow metabolism idea and incorrectly translated it to deep and dormant, which is a critical and often fatal mistake for our fishing success. Now let's get into the why. What really dictates where fish hang out in the winter? It's not just temperature, it's about a combination of factors, and one of the biggest is oxygen. In some lakes, especially those with a lot of decaying vegetation on the bottom, the deepest parts can actually become oxygen depleted as the winter goes on. The water is stagnant. Meanwhile, the water just under the ice, which was the last to have contact with the air, can be richer in oxygen. The entire ecosystem of the lake can shift upwards. The bait fish, the perch, the shiners, they need that oxygen, and where the food goes, the predators are never far behind. So while you're fishing in that dead zone on the bottom, the party is happening 20 feet above your bait. Another critical piece of the puzzle is light. We often think of the ice and snow as a thick blanket that plunges the lake into darkness. But that's not entirely true. A surprising amount of light can penetrate, especially on a bright day, with clear ice or minimal snow cover. This light is fuel. It allows for the survival of microscopic organisms, which in turn feed the minnows and small panfish that pike love to eat. This entire food chain is concentrated in the top several feet of the water column where the light is strongest. The bottom of the lake can be a dark, barren desert in comparison. The fish are simply following the energy source, and that source starts at the surface. So, if the oxygen is better up top and the light that fuels the food chain is up top, where do you think the baitfish are going to be? Exactly. They're not dumb. They're going to school up in that active, life-supporting zone just under the ice. Think of them like little solar panels soaking up whatever weak warmth and light they can find. You'll see massive schools of shiners, perch, and bluegills suspended just a few feet down. They feel safer there. It's where their food is. They are the engine of the entire winter ecosystem, and their location is the #1 clue for finding their biggest enemy. This leads to the most basic, fundamental rule of predator fishing that for some reason we forget the second we step on the ice. The predator follows the prey. It is the golden rule. You wouldn't hunt for wolves in a desert with no rabbits, so why are we hunting for pike in a deep-water desert with no baitfish? If the perch and shiners are hanging out 2 feet under the ice, a big northern pike isn't going to wait 25 feet below, hoping one of them makes a mistake and swims down. No, that pike is going to be right there with them, silently cruising the same shallow zone, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Our job as anglers is to put our bait where the hunter is hunting. Let's start calling this zone what it is, the under-ice highway. It's that top layer of water, anywhere from 1 to maybe 5 or 6 feet deep. This isn't just a random patch of water, it's a distinct environmental niche. It has the most light, the most oxygen, and therefore the most food. The pike use this highway to travel, to stage, and to hunt. They patrol the edges of weed beds and drop-offs, but they do it from above, not from below. They are constantly looking up, waiting for the silhouette of a careless perch or a struggling shiner. And your bait needs to be in that lane, not sitting in the ditch on the bottom of the lake. Why is this under-ice highway so active? It's not just about the baitfish. The ice itself provides something invaluable to a predator: cover. A massive northern pike feels exposed in the middle of a deep water basin, but just under the ice, it's a different story. The rough, opaque surface of the ice breaks up their silhouette from above. It provides a solid ceiling of cover that they can use to their advantage. They feel hidden, and that makes them bold. They can cruise with confidence, knowing they are concealed from above, ready to ambush anything that moves below them. They use the ice the same way they'd use a thick weed bed or a submerged log in the summer. Think about how a pike hunts. It's an ambush predator, but it's also a master of the upward strike. Their eyes are positioned on the top of their head for a reason. They are designed to attack from below. In open water, they'll hide in the weeds and strike up. Under the ice, they use the entire water column below them as their kill zone and the ice itself as their cover. A pike suspended 3 feet down is perfectly positioned to see and attack any baitfish silhouetted against the bright ice from 10 or 15 feet away. It's the ultimate predatory advantage. By setting our bait deep, we are placing it outside of their primary visual hunting field. I'll never forget the day this all clicked for me. I was out with a buddy, a classic old-timer. We had 8 tip-ups out, all set within a foot or 2 of the bottom in about 20 feet of water. 6 hours went by. Nothing. Not a single flag. I was frustrated, bored, and started messing around. I reeled one tip-up all the way up, so the 6-inch shiner was literally just a foot under the ice. But my buddy laughed at me, said I was wasting my time. Not 10 minutes later, that flag shot up so hard it almost flew off the tip-up. We pulled in a fat 36-inch northern. The fish had been there, right under us the whole time. We just weren't speaking its language. If we could drop an underwater camera down there, what we'd see would shock most people. You'd lower it past the empty, murky depths, and then, as it rises into that top 5 feet of water, the world would come alive. You would see schools of panfish. You would see the light filtering through the ice. And then you'd see him. A shadow, moving slowly, confidently, a massive pike just hanging there, suspended, not moving much, just watching, waiting. He wouldn't be looking down. His eyes would be scanning horizontally and, most importantly, upwards. Seeing that with your own eyes one time is enough to make you never set a deep line for pike again. So how shallow is shallow? This is the key question. We're not talking about setting your bait 6 inches off the bottom in shallow water. We're talking about setting your bait 6 inches from the top. For me, a great starting point in, say, 10 to 25 feet of water is to set the bait just 1 to 3 feet below the bottom of the ice. That's it. It feels ridiculously, uncomfortably shallow at first. Your brain will be screaming at you that no self-respecting fish would be that high up. You have to ignore that instinct. Trust the process. This is the kill zone. This is the highway. You want your bait to be the most obvious, easy meal for a pike that is looking up. Let's walk through setting that first tip up. You drill your hole. You put your transducer in to check the depth. Let's say it's 20 feet. Your old habit is to drop your bait down 19 feet. Your new strategy is this. Pull out about 3 feet of line from your reel. That's your leader, plus a little more. Hook on your bait and just drop it in the hole. Set your flag. That's it. Your large shiner or sucker is now kicking 1 to 2 feet below the ice. It is perfectly silhouetted. It's in the high oxygen, high visibility zone. It looks like a wounded, struggling bait fish that got separated from its school. It's an irresistible target for any cruising pike. Now, this doesn't mean you should set all your tip-ups 1 foot deep. The best approach is to use your full spread of tip-ups to cover the entire upper half of the water column. This is the staggered approach. If you have 5 tip-ups, set one at 2 feet down, set the next one at 4 feet, the third one at 6 feet, maybe one at 8 feet, and your last one around 10 feet or halfway to the bottom. This way, you're not just guessing, you're systematically searching for the exact depth the pike are using that day. More often than not, you will find that your shallowest 1 or 2 sets get all the action. It's a fantastic way to prove the concept to yourself. Does this mean you should never, ever fish deep again? No, of course not. Fishing is a game of variables, not absolutes. There are times when fishing near the bottom is the right call. Maybe you're on a sharp drop-off and you know pike use the base of that ledge as an ambush point. Or perhaps you're targeting a different species like lake trout alongside your pike sets. The point isn't that deep is always wrong. The point is that deep should not be your automatic go-to default setting. The shallow strategy should be the first thing you try, especially on a new body of water or when the bite is slow. Let's talk about bait for these shallow sets. Does it matter? Absolutely. You want something with life and visibility. A big, lively golden shiner or a small sucker is perfect. You want it to be kicking and flashing. That movement sends out vibrations that pike can feel with their lateral line, and the flash catches their eye from a distance. A dead bait hanging motionless 1 foot under the ice just looks unnatural. You want your bait to look like it's in distress, an easy meal. So use the liveliest, most active bait you can get your hands on. It makes a huge difference when you're trying to draw a predator in from a distance. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but I caught my biggest pike ever in 30 feet of water, 1 foot off the bottom. And I believe you, it absolutely happens. But I would ask you to consider this. Was that a repeatable pattern, or was it a one-time thing? Were you catching fish there all day, Or was it a single lucky bite? The shallow water strategy is all about playing the percentages. It's about putting your bait in the highest probability zone for the longest amount of time. You might get lucky with a deep set line once in a while, but you will get consistent action with shallow set lines once you learn to trust them. There's a real psychological barrier to fishing this shallow. It feels wrong. It goes against everything we've been taught. We have this deep-seated fear that we're fishing over their heads. It takes confidence to set a bait 2 feet under the ice and just walk away, trusting that a predator will come up to get it. It's like casting a lure into 2 inches of water in the summer. It feels like a waste, but you have to push past that feeling. The biggest gains in fishing often come from doing the exact opposite of what everyone else on the ice is doing. While they're all huddled over their deep holes, you'll be the one running for a flag. If you're still skeptical, I want you to try a simple experiment on your very next trip. It's a 50-50 challenge. Set half of your tip-ups the way you normally would, down near the bottom. Then take the other half and set them all within 5 feet of the ice. Fish the entire day that way. Don't change anything else. Use the same bait. Fish the same general area. Just let the depth be the only variable. I am willing to bet that by the end of the day, your shallow sets will have outfished your deep sets, maybe by a margin of 5-1. Let the fish tell you what they want. The results will speak for themselves. Finally, remember that this shallow technique isn't magic. It still has to be combined with the fundamentals of good location. You still need to fish on points, along weed lines, or over underwater structures. The difference is how you attack those spots. Instead of setting your tip-ups on the bottom at the base of a drop-off, set them shallow at the top edge of that drop-off. Instead of fishing the deep hole in the middle of a bay, fish shallow around the edges of that bay. You're still fishing the right zip code, but now you're putting the bait on the right floor of the building. And that makes all the difference. So let's wrap this all up. For years, the default setting for ice fishing has been to go deep. We assumed that in the cold, pike hunker down on the bottom. But the reality is often the complete opposite. The real action, the real hunting ground, is the under-ice highway, at the top 5 or 6 feet of the water column. It's where the oxygen is, it's where the light is, and most importantly, it's where the food is. The real aha moment here is realizing that pike actively use the ice above them as cover, turning them into upward-striking ambush machines. They are looking up, not down. By changing just one thing, setting your tip-up shallow instead of deep, you put your bait directly in their line of sight. This isn't just a gimmick, it's a strategic shift based on the pike's actual winter behavior. It could be the single most important change you make to your ice fishing this year. Thank you so much for watching. If this video opened your eyes, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and give it a thumbs up. Now for the real discussion. What's the biggest pike you've ever caught through the ice? And more importantly, how deep was your bait set? Let's compare notes in the comments.